If an animal sacrifice was made, it was in the belief that the discharge of the beast's vital energy at the climax of the ritual would saturate the circle and so attract the spirit like a light in the darkness. But the act of killing a live creature would also serve to shock the magician into a heightened state of awareness. At this point, the incantation is spoken aloud 3 times if necessary, each time with increasing sternness and expectation, as if calling a reluctant dog to heel. Spirits and demons were considered low-grade life forms, so it was thought necessary to train them like wild beasts. An extract form, the Limigeton, gives an idea of the formula. Okay, so, I conjure and command thee, O Spirit, by him who spake, and it was done by the most holy and glorious names of Adonai, El Elohem Elohe, Zebut Elun, Isert. Uh, I'm, I'm sorry guys, I will skip this one because it's like a spell. So, I'm afraid. So, let's skip that one. Okay. So, angelic spirits were summoned more as respectfully and always with the provision that they should only come with the blessing of God. This is also ensured that a mischievous demon did not take the opportunity to appear in the guise of an angel. According to Aleister Crowley, I have been accused of being a black magician. No more foolish statement was ever made about me. I despise the things to such an extent that I can hardly believe in the existence of people so debased and idiotic as to practice it. Modern magicians understand that it is not the words that are important, but the intention of the adept, because spells, invocations, and ritual objects have no inherent power of their own. Some modern occultists create their own invocations and find them even more effective than the archaic spells because they are personal. Page 158. A Brief Encounter. Aleister Crowley had little use for archaic conjurations, preferring to create his own. One of the most effective of these was said to be the Liber Samek for summoning a demon called Coronson. Crowley used this ritual in 1909 or 1909 during the trip to Algiers. He was accompanied into the deserted by a devoted pupil. Sorry, he was accompanied into the desert by a devoted pupil, Victor Newborg, who assisted him in drawing the magic circle in the sand, followed by the triangle of the Solomon, as prescribed by the Lemegeton. Then they slit the throats of 3 pigeons and deposited their blood at the tip of each point of the triangle. Newburgh stayed in the circle while Crowley, attired in a black hooded robe, knelt in the triangle and invited the demon to take possession of him. Using an incantation from the Grimoire of Honorius, in one hand he held a topaz, and it was within this stone that the demon appeared. Speaking in Crowley's voice, it boasted of the pluck it had brought into the world in ancient times. Newburgh remained in the protection of the circle, but he was almost tempted to leave it when he realized that Crowley had been replaced by a beautiful, alluring woman who now implored him to join her. But Newburgh reminded himself that this was an illusion. one of the Coronson's typical tricks. At that moment, the demon showed its true face and let out loud mocking laugh. Then it tried another ruse. It offered to serve as Newberg's assistant if only Newberg would invite it into the circle. But Crowley had taught his pupil well, and he refused. Coronson then resorted to the oldest trick in the Sorcerer's Handbook. It assumed the form of Newberg's master and begged for water to quench its tears. But again, Newberg refused. He threatened the demon with all the torments of hell if it did not depart. It was not impressed. Thinkest thou of fool that there is any anger and any pain that I am not, or any hell but this my spirit. Yep. Corazon unleashed a torrent of abuse and then threw sand into the circle, breaking the outline. Before Newberg could repair it, the demon was inside the circle, clutching at his throat. Newberg fought back furiously, repeating the names of power and stabbing the apparition with a sacred dagger. Corazon broke off the attack and retreated to the triangle, whereupon it assumed the form of the alluring woman. Finally, the vital energy of the Pigon's blood dissipated, and it was drawn back into the world from which it had come, leaving Crowley disoriented and exhausted. Page 159. A Nasty Little Boy. The true face of the notorious magician Aleister Crowley is, shor- is shrouded in might and misinformation, much of it of his own making. Even his most devoted disciples have a distorted image of the man who wallow in the title The Great Beast. Crowley was a master of manipulation, a shameless self-publicist who craved attention and took a perverse pleasure in shocking polite society with his boasts of drug addiction and debauchery. He relished his role as the wickedest man in the world and did everything he could do to enhance his reputation. Someone once described him as a nasty little boy who never grew up. And though the description does not take account of his considerable influence on the Western esoteric tradition, specifically practical magic, it is by all accounts a pretty accurate summation of his singularly unpleasant personality. Crowley was born in Royal Learnington Spa near Stratford-upon-Avon on October 1875, 12th day. Christian Edward Alexander Crowley. He changed his name to Aleister. While he was at university, his puritanical parents were affectionate and overindulgent in raising their only child, but he resented his strict, oppressive upbringing. Later describing his mother as a brainless bigot, his father died suddenly just as Aleister entered his teens, and this had a profound effect on his development. As he became more and more willful and provocative, his mother became increasingly passionate in her devotion to the church. She attempted to instill in her only son the belief that sex was the devil's creation and that to submit to temptation was the first step on the road of damnation. Love was a challenge to Christianity, Crowley later wrote, and he determined to overcome it at the earliest opportunity. At the age of 14, he seduced the housemaid in his mother's bed while she was attending church. When he gleefully confessed, she accused him of being the great beast of the Apocalypse, whose coming had been prophesied in the book of Revelation, and she sent him away to boarding school. Her reaction only compounded his belief that religious mania was a mild form of insanity. His early passions. Away from his mother's watchful eye, he explored his bisexuality with reckless abandon, as well as his passion for writing pornographic poetry. His verses failed to make much of an impression in literary circles, where they were dismissed as decadent, derivative, and morbidly sadistic. Undaunted, Crowley paid to have them published because he could not accept that he could be anything other than brilliant at everything he attempted. It is a strange coincidence, he later boasted, that one small country should have given England its two greatest poets, for one must not forget Shakespeare. His other consuming passion at that time was mountaineering, for which he was well equipped both mentally and physically. His bear-like physique and fearless disregard for danger ensured that he excelled, although he lacked the team spirit and concern for his fellow climbers that is as critical to success in the sports as skill and strength. He once famously abandoned his climbing partners to their fate during an ascent of Kanchenjunga. Kanchenjunga, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but it is here. Wait, Kanchenjunga. Okay. When it looked as if they would prevent him from reaching the summit, he had been deposed as leader of the expedition for his sadistically cruel treatment of the porters. And when the other members of the party were buried in an avalanche, he remained in his tent, sullen and spiteful, ignoring their cries for help. His first steps to power. But climbing and verse were forgotten when Crowley discovered the occult on his late teens. He consumed MacGregor Matters, the Kabbalah unveiled in A.E. Waite's The Book of Black Magic and of Pax in a single sitting, but stubbornly refused to acknowledge the depth his own books own to both authors whom he scorned as pretentious. It was impossible for Crowley to compliment anyone because he considered everyone his inferior. But he was excited by Matter's idea that magic offered a means for rising above the mundane routine of everyday existence, and that attainment in occult matters depended on one's intuition, not on intellect. As Crowley later recalled, success in magic depended on the ability to awaken one's creative genius by not only believing that one's wish will become a reality, but also visualizing it. A childlike expectation of success and a dogged determination to obtain what one desires at any cost is crucial to the outcome of ceremonial magic. In every magical act, the rational mind must be suspended because it limits the power of the unconscious. In much the same way a disapproving parent can hinder the progress of a child by making them aware of the problems they might encounter. Crowley's initial success as a magician was the result of his unflinching belief in himself, a belief that later mutated into self-love, overshadowing his intuition. He had a taste of his potential power at an early age. While he was an undergraduate at Cambridge, he cursed a master who had refused to allow him to stag a bawdy play. He did it by sticking pins into a wax figure he had made. But the ritual did not go as Crowley had planned. On the night of a full moon, He convinced a number of his fellow students to join him in a field adjacent to St. John's College. They were supposed to form a circle while he performed the conjuration. But at the critical moment, one of the group lost his nerve and tried to wrest the doll from Crowley's grasp. The needle slipped and stuck into his foot. The next day, the master fell down some step and broke his ankle. Crowley was initially delighted to be invited to join Mather's fashionable occult circle, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, in 1898, which counted several members of the Victorian establishment among its members, including the poet W. B. Yeats and several eminent authors. But he despaired when he discovered that they were as preoccupied with rank and regulation as the Freemasons. They were not protagonists in the spiritual warfare against restriction, he observed, against the oppressors of the human soul, the blasphemers who deny the supremacy of the will of man, by which he was referring to institutionalized religion. Crowley once Crowley was impatient for power, and he was obsessed with the notion that sex and magic were somehow linked, that the vital energy channeled during intercourse could be used in ritual magic so that one's deepest desires were brought into being. With his inherited wealth, veneer of sophistication, and domineering personality, Crowley would not lack for admirers. They would submit to any humiliating act if he flattered them into believing that it could give birth to a magical child, a soulless thought form that would be his bidding. Sex magic, however, was frowned upon by the grey birds and the golden dawn, who found Crowley's brazen ambition embarrassing and decidedly bad taste. Crowley felt that he was entitled to an exalted rank within the society, but Matters thought differently. Their enmity intensified until in 1904 the two men sparred in open court over the rights to the once secret rituals that Crowley claimed had been bequeathed to him by the order's incorporeal secret chiefs. Matter successfully obtained an injunction that prevented his rival from publishing the material, but Crowley was a bad loser. He summoned Beelzebub. He summoned Beelzebub and his 49 attendant demons to harass his enemy. Matters retaliated by cursing Crowley's dogs and making his servants sick, but the psychic attack left him drained and defeated, and he lost the subsequent appeal. The attendant publicity precipitated the solution of the order and propelled Crowley on the page of the Sunday tabloids, whose readers lapped up his tales of psychic tussles on the astral plane, but they were even more fascinated by his bizarre relationships and his drug addiction. Page 166. Drugs, Sex, and the Serpent's Kiss. Serpent's Kiss. Crowley's voracious sexual appetites and sadistic streak were satisfied by a number of neurotic and impressionable women who willingly submitted to his demands, which he justified by claiming that they were part of an occult ritual. He even went to the extreme of filing his two canine teeth to a point so that he could give his adoring female disciples a serpent's kiss. He had also become addicted to mescaline, which over time drained his considerable inner strength and adversely affected his health. Had he not possessed such an indomitable will, he would have deteriorated at a far faster rate. Generous doses of heroin, opium, and hashish clouded his judgment and perception, as well as exacerbating his idiosyncrasies and his relationships, which were unconventional to say the least. Neurotic and masochistic women were fatally attracted to him, so he could dominate and abuse them as he wished. On one occasion, acquaintances witnessed him kicking one of his mistresses, whom he had tied up and left to sleep on the floor of their apartment. Another time, he locked his first wife in a wardrobe while he entertained a mistress in the same room. He was equally abusive to his male lovers and companions, using them and discarding them as if they were sick dogs. Those who crossed him attested to the efficacy of his curses, which left one former acolyte in a state of nervous exhaustion for months afterwards. Crowley forged a psychic bond with his more devoted disciples, which was as difficult for them to break as an addiction to drugs and alcohol. It was widely believed in occult circles that Matter's death in 1918 was a direct result of Crowley's curse. The Book of the Law, page 166. By the time of the court case, Crowley was still in his 20s, but he was already a larger than a life figure in Bohemian circles and a magician of considerable power. However, his private life was a mess. He had befriended a promising young painter, Gerald Kelly, later to be president of the Royal Academy, and had jokingly offered to marry his new friend's emotionally unstable sister Rose, to save her from the unwanted attentions of numerous suitors. The family were enraged to think that these fantasies might inherit their wealth, and they became positively apoplectic when Crowley wed Rose the very next day and then dragged her off to Paris, announcing that from now on they were to be addressed as Prince and Princess Khan. All correspondence not appropriately addressed was to be returned unopened. The marriage revealed Crowley's infantile spite for all to see. He led Rose like a petulant child from Paris to Cairo and then on the Ceylon, exploiting her masochistic devotion to him even though he was clearly determined to humiliate her. But then, something entirely unpredictable occurred. Rose, now is pregnant with her first child, revealed herself to be a medium. Whether this was true or not, at least it guaranteed that she would finally get her husband full attention. She told him that he had offended the Egyptian god Horus, but that if he followed her instruction to the letter, he could invoke the deity, who would take a radical new scripture that would bear his name. Crowley confessed that he thought the ritual was nonsensical, but it proved to be effective. Not only did Horus speak to him, presumably through Rose, but so too did Crowley's guardian angel, Aiwass. Together they dictated the entire text that was later published as the Book of the Law. It was a pseudo-biblical pastiche that announced the establishment of a new religion whose central tenet was the man is God and Aleister Crowley is his prophet. Had Crowley lived in America in the 1960s, he might well have founded a profitable new cult. However, in the years before the First World War, he was dismissed by the general public as just another crank in the mold of Theosophy's leader, Madame Blavatsky, who also claimed to channel esoteric wisdom from the spirit world. His self-centered philosophy did, however, influence a generation that emerged in the cynical 1970s, and it was adopted as the core credo of the Church of Satan. His edict to leave the weak and vicious to their own fate and reject feelings of piety for those who suffer could have been taken directly from the Satanic Bible. The life figure of bohemian circles and a magician of considerable power. However, his private life was a mess. Oh, sorry, it was. I'm sorry, wrong page. Okay, but during his lifetime, the public's perception of Crowley's occultism was distorted by all of the brouhaha surrounding his chaotic private life. Rose was an unreliable muse. After their baby died of typhoid fever in Rangon, she gave birth to a second child but proved to be an incapable mother. She turned to drink and was later committed to an asylum. Summoning the spirits. Meanwhile, Crowley had attained a degree of occult power which only his close friends and initiates were privileged to witness. One of them described how Crowley demonstrated his superior will by rendering one man unconscious and making another beg like a dog. On further occasion, the American writer William C. Brooke was strolling with Crowley along in the Fifth Avenue in New York when he asked him for a demonstration of his abilities. Crowley agreed. He fell in step behind a stranger for a few moments. Hold on. Okay. He fell in step behind a stranger for a few moments, imitating his walk, and then he buckled at the knees, which caused the man to collapse on the pavement. Even while living in a rented London apartment, Crowley succeeded in summoning beings from the netherworld. On one occasion, he materialized a helmeted healing spirit, and on other, he summoned an army of demons, who marched around the room until they were dispelled by the first rays of the morning sun. But at Boleskine House, his newly acquired estate on the shores of Loch Ness in England, it is in Scotland, the spirits became so numerous that it is said he had to work with all the lights on, even in broad daylight, for the room was alive with shadows. Legend has it that the lodge keeper became possessed and attempted to murder his family, which prompted Crowley to take an unplanned trip to Mexico. There he claimed to have come close to making his own reflection disappear from the surface of a mirror by sheer willpower. He realized that man is a god, but he lacked the humility to submit to this higher self as true adept would do. Alright, that will be the end for our book reading for tonight, and we will continue it tomorrow. And I hope, guys, you enjoy listening. And I'll be seeing you now in my party, and please join me again tomorrow so to have another book listening. And I wish you all guys to have a good night as well. Yes, for the hard copy of this content, The Dark History of the Occult, you can purchase it in any online stores like eBay, Amazon, or in the Google Play. Okay, so oh, hi T. Uh, uh, hi T. Hi, hello. Okay, shout out to Hajime, Total, and everyone else. Hi, hello, hello, guys. T, I'm sorry. Okay, tomorrow, tomorrow. All right, I will open my party now. So, guys, join me. Yeah, we will have in the party the continuation. Love is in the air. All right. Okay, guys. Bye. Good night.